Meantime, as the Animal Foundation deals with one crisis after another, former employees say the troubled shelter continues to be the victim of its own mismanagement. And tonight, in a 13 Investigates exclusive, Chief Investigator Darcy Spears obtained a secret audio recording that shows the two faces of the Animal Foundation. One put out to the public and another a very different face that staff sees behind closed doors.
I really want to say to you personally, I know it's on me at the end of the day, and I'm so sorry that you all felt like you had no alternative but to take the action that you did.
You're listening to an audio recording of a meeting between Animal Foundation CEO Hillary Gray and 8 former members of the shelter's admissions team who quit en masse on a recent Sunday morning.
That day, Sunday, we came into a full room, full blue room, full Flex 2 room. Yeah, our overflow room. We already had, and then we already had animal control coming in, asking for space, and we were scrambling while animal welfare is, just barely starting to clean kennels.
Some of the staffers who walked out had been there for less than 1 year, others for 7 years or more.
We've been struggling for a while. Mm-hmm. We've asked for help. We've asked multiple different people for help. Nothing ever got done.
They recorded the meeting without telling Hillary Gray, fed up with being overworked, underpaid, and unheard.
When we ask for help, it kind of falls like on deaf ears.
After the group of 8 quit, there were only 2 admission staffers left, and the Animal Foundation was forced to temporarily close, then plead with the public for help.
We're placing an urgent call to the community for temporary foster support to get animals out of the shelter environment and to free up space for new intakes and for the animals that really need our helps the most.
I'm not surprised that they're in the spot that they're at. I'm surprised that they haven't listened to the warning signs.
Former Chief Operating Officer James Pumphrey is speaking publicly for the first time to 13 Investigates. He says he warned shelter management months earlier that admission staff would leave if working conditions and wages did not improve.
We had a meeting with the chief executive, with the operations leaders of the shelter, and we very articulated, we will lose the admissions team. They will walk. And, 2 months later, they did.
In July, Pumphrey submitted this report documenting the staff's struggles and other systemic problems. He was fired days after sending the report to the foundation board president and CEO Hillary Gray.
They didn't want to give staff pay raises that the board had already approved. That was the most troubling of it all. And I didn't understand, and I still don't understand why that was the case. It was quite avoidable.
The former admission staff says Pumphrey was the only top-level executive who worked to help them with a very demanding job. Admissions employees are the front line at the Animal Foundation. They deal with the public turning in strays, owners surrendering their pets, and people reclaiming lost pets. They intake animals from city, county, and North Las Vegas Animal Control, processing, even vaccinating every animal. They work shifts that often range from 12 to 16 hours a day and are paid about $13 an hour. In the press conference Gray held after they quit, she said their departure came as a surprise.
I was shattered personally.
The former staffers who recorded that meeting say they felt that was disingenuous. 3 of them were supervisors, and they all claim that Hillary Gray could and should have seen that coming due to conditions that occurred on her watch and were documented by Pumphrey in this July report. They say the Animal Foundation is failing to be transparent with the public and the government entities they contract with. Failing to admit the shelter is often at capacity and constantly playing catch-up to intake animals.
They're suffering because they're still in those dirty kennels.
We don't really have people in the morning. We all come in at 11 when the doors open, and we don't have time to process any dogs to make room for the public. We have the public waiting in a line of dogs, holding dogs, and we don't have room.
One former employee said dogs often sit in cages in admissions for 15 or more hours before being moved into the shelter, some in desperate need of medical care.
There was a dog that was bleeding out, basically. There's blood all over its kennel.
Another former employee detailed threats they got from the public.
stating they're either gonna abandon a dog, tie him up to a pole. Those are just the very common ones we get. The bigger threats we get is that they're gonna come in with guns, they're gonna come in and threaten us to take their dogs back.
To blow up.
Or to fight.
Again, those are scenarios then COO James Pumphrey documented in that July report. Former employees say nothing changed.
Everyone kept leaving or getting fired, but we never replaced those roles, and everything expected us to pretty much do the jobs of 3 other people and get paid just the $13.50. That's a lot of reason why they're not staying. You could go down the streets of this Panda Express and they have a sign that says hiring 16 to 17, 18, and 19.
To the public in the press conference, Gray said of the employees who quit,
So we're speaking to them. I'm hopeful that some of them might consider coming back as well.
in private,
Would you rather us return back to the Animal Foundation?
Right now, you all have made your decision, and we're going to be looking to staff back up.
With the staff backup, I mean, we could have used that a long time ago. What would be different to hiring now?
I mean, I can't answer that question for you right now.
she offers no raise to bring them back. They ask what the plan is for new hires.
Do you think they're gonna actually be paid more or actually be set off with the $13.50 or less?
I mean, we're going to look at everything, but it's like you guys have made your decision that you felt like you needed to leave individually. If you want to look at coming back, like there'll be processes for that for sure.
Pumphrey has also heard the audio recording of that meeting.
At no point in time did she ever say, "You're valuable, you're experienced, we want you back, what can we do to bring you back?"
Right.
There's the public face and there's what she said to those people in that meeting. What do we make of how divergent those paths are?
I think that private face is what the staff and the volunteers are encountering, and it's callous.
Hillary Gray did not respond to our request for comment. We spoke to the former employees after they met with her, and they called the meeting useless. Tomorrow, as our investigation continues, we'll have more from former COO James Pumphrey as he talks about why he was fired and how he says he was pressured to paint a less than truthful picture of shelter operations. Join me for that Tuesday on 13 Action News at 6. Animal Foundation is the largest open intake shelter in the country. The woman who currently runs it took over as CEO in late January with no prior experience as a shelter operator. She came from working in corporate communications. Aside from a brief stint as a volunteer board member at the Nevada SPCA, her background, like almost everyone on the Animal Foundation's board, is in marketing and public relations, not animal welfare. As we continue our reports on the systemic issues within the Animal Foundation, we learn more about what it takes to run an animal shelter, and it's not easy. It's dirty work, tiring and emotional for the staff, and stressful for the animals. When the Animal Foundation took on contracts to shelter animals for 3 local jurisdictions, critics say they bit off more than they could chew.
These are marketing people. These aren't shelter medicine people.
An emphasis on public image over proper management has been the shelter's downfall, according to animal advocates.
These are PR people.
And former employees.
Presently, what's being led is a marketing and PR campaign. And I believe that our community and I believe our elected officials are being lied to.
Until we see somebody who has the experience, that actually has animal shelter experience, that actually has operational experience, until they have somebody in that position, we are not going to see changes.
James Pumphrey had that experience.
I came, certainly from an independent shelter assessment in December.
After performing that audit at the Animal Foundation's request, Pumphrey was asked to relocate from Reno and his job at the Duffield Foundation to join the shelter's leadership team.
I was hesitant to take the job.
But he says he was eager to help and hopeful his sheltering experience would make a difference at a higher level.
I was promised that the shelter assessment would be implemented. But as soon as I got there, within a few weeks, I was told to, or pressured to edit the assessment. that I completed.
Edits that he says would have whitewashed problems, painting a less than truthful picture for donors and the elected officials who oversee the foundation's contracts.
And when I declined to do so, I had a sinking feeling that the ethics that I've lived my career by were being put in a conflicted place. I wanted to make the changes, but I was being asked to present progress, not problems.
He says he was asked to fudge the numbers on facility capacity to make it look like the Animal Foundation had things under control.
They wanted you to lie about what they could accomplish, what they could handle?
That and what changes needed to be made on the jurisdictional level. They wanted to present a view that everything was okay and that we were going to meet the challenge. And we knew that it wasn't going to happen.
We've repeatedly asked shelter leadership and top board members for comment on Pumphrey's allegations. They have not responded.
They should be leading the approach of, hey, we have too many animals in our facility than we can properly care for.
Despite the conflict, Pumphrey says he soldiered on, advocating for better paid and more experienced staff, particularly in the veterinary department.
I encountered animals that weren't even being examined for 3 to 4 days. 2 in particular were shocking to me. 2 dogs had broken pelvises, and they had received no examination or no pain management for over 3 days. It was unacceptable, and I brought those concerns directly to the CEO and received no help or participation in that.
In July, Pumphrey took it upon himself to write this progress report on the December assessment.
They weren't asking you for that document, but you felt it was important for them to see it in black and white.
Correct. I felt it was needed. I also felt it was needed to offer solutions and a pathway forward.
Internal emails confirm he gave the report to CEO Hillary Gray and board chair Kevin Murakami. Neither responded to 13 Investigate's repeated requests for comment, something Pumphrey says he's familiar with. He tells me when he asked to meet with Gray about the report,
no response.
What happened when you brought it to the attention of the president and the board?
2 days later, I was fired. I think it was that the message that I was delivering internally was different than the message that they wanted to deliver externally.
That's just putting your head in the sand.
It was. And that's why they're at where they're at today.
After the Animal Foundation fired Pumphrey, they lost another valuable asset.
I think it's really discouraging.
We spoke to Dr. Kate Hurley last fall. She and her team at UC Davis, some of the nation's top shelter medicine experts, had been consulting with and advising the Animal Foundation. When we spoke again recently, Dr. Hurley said they'd cut ties with the Las Vegas shelter after Pumphrey was fired because he was the only one they trusted to be their eyes and ears on the ground, and remaining leadership had no sheltering experience.
Do you think that the current leadership is capable of admitting those problems and taking the steps forward that need to be taken to keep animals and staff healthy and safe?
I don't know if they're capable. I know that they're unwilling. And I think animals and our community is paying the price.
For a previous report, when we asked about Pumphrey's firing, shelter leadership said they could not comment on personnel matters. The City Council is expected to discuss the Animal Foundation on Wednesday, and anyone who wants to participate will be allowed to speak during the public comment period.
First, politics and public relations placed above people and pets. That's among the allegations that took center stage at today's City Council meeting. A packed house implored elected officials to make what they called long overdue change at the embattled Animal Foundation. Hello, and thanks so much for joining us here live at 6. I'm Joe Mueller. Trisha Keene has the night off. We have team coverage tonight. Let's start with 13 Chief Investigator Darcy Spears, who is joining us live in the studio with the very latest. Darcy.
Joe, political gamesmanship was in full swing during the council meeting today. CEO Hillary Gray of the Animal Foundation has referred to herself in the past as a political operative. She was texting select council members during the meeting. We should note that texts with elected officials are public records. Sources who shared the text messages with 13 Investigates show Gray repeatedly texted the one council member who said the city should leave the Animal Foundation alone.
To provide requirements on them is unreasonable, in my opinion.
Records show Councilman Brian Knudsen received a $2,000 campaign contribution from one of the Animal Foundation's board members. He said while everyone cares about animals, the city needs to prioritize its actions for other populations living in poor conditions.
I would also just want to point out that for our humans out there, these conditions are true for children and for seniors as well.
This rescuer with Doggy Task Force took issue with what many perceived as the council's failure to hold Animal Foundation leadership accountable.
Who answers to who? Because it's starting to look like the council answers to the board of the Animal Foundation. I'd like to think that that's not true, but we have to look at what's happening. You are the leaders. They answer to you. They work for you.
Thank you.
This screenshot of a text Councilman Knudsen sent to Hillary Gray during the meeting tells her, "Stay strong. Sorry this is happening." That in the face of a mountain of criticism over conditions many say amounts to neglect, even cruel treatment of both animals and staff. Shelter leadership were accused of keeping problems secret, lack of transparency with the public, personal attacks on critics, and firing staff who speak out. When 18 audience members properly gave their minute of public comment to former Animal Foundation COO James Pumphrey, who's an outspoken shelter critic, Gray texted Councilman Knudsen he shouldn't be able to speak for 20 minutes, effectively giving a presentation. She texted that Pumphrey was fired for cause, accusing him of doing, quote, horrible things. We should note that we've asked the CEO for comment on Pumphrey's departure multiple times. She said she cannot comment on personnel matters.
I have been tight-lipped about the Animal Foundation's management up to this point to concentrate on our own organization's work.
Lori Herron is executive director of the Nevada SPCA.
When Ms. Gray, who was on our board of directors, called me at the end of December last year to tell me she was the new CEO of the Animal Foundation and she thought she got the job because of her political contacts and the turnaround at Nevada SPCA. My team and I were very surprised that she was the board's choice.
Critics say the time has come for truth and accountability.
Anyone who has made complaints, anyone who has showed their photos and made complaints to the higher ups, to Hillary, Vanessa, whoever else is in charge on the board, they're silenced. They're told to keep their mouth shut. They're told to delete the evidence, and then they just quit. So now you have nobody taking care of the animals who actually cares about the animals. So we need change and we need truth.
Truth continued to be called into question after board member Matthew Silverman questioned the experience a former volunteer shared with 13 Action News about healthy kittens being euthanized at the Animal Foundation.
It's very heart-wrenching and horrible to have to hear all of the bad things that people are saying when they don't speak about all the good things. We don't euthanize kittens like they're talking about. Those are not our practices.
Former admissions supervisor Kendra Segovia contradicts that. She recently quit with 7 other members of her team in protest over poor conditions for animals and staff.
I was taken aback by Hillary and the board member, a board member who I haven't seen once at the Animal Foundation. Also, the part where he said we don't euthanize kittens. I've personally walked a litter of kittens to the euthanasia room, so that was a complete lie. And I think we've all walked a couple kittens to the euthanasia room. So I don't know if he was lying or if they're lying to him about certain things.
Wherever the truth lies, there was at least some agreement that it's time for better oversight. The council voted unanimously to hire an independent firm to audit the Animal Foundation's finances. Mayor Pro Tem Stavros Anthony called for even more.
So I'm not sure why we don't have a City of Las Vegas council person to sit on that board. And maybe the county.
He wants foundation board meetings to be open to the public and said there should be more stringent requirements for shelter leadership.
When it comes to the executive director for the Animal Foundation, I don't know how that person is chosen. But a couple of comments on that. I think there should be some kind of minimum qualifications, just like any job.
Qualifications including actual experience operating an animal shelter, which the current CEO does not have.
We can't just keep turning a blind eye to these problems and hope they go away. We need to bring about real, lasting change, whether it is a revised contract that gives us accountability, expanding our relationship with other nonprofit organization or looking at our own facility. Whatever the answer is, that provides us with a safe and effective animal care facility.
We made a records request for all text messages Hillary Gray exchanged with council members during the meeting. We also reached out to Gray and to Councilman Knudsen for comment about their text conversation, but they have not replied. In the studio, Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates. We're continuing to hear the same criticism about Animal Foundation leaders putting politics and public relations above people and pets. Now, a Las Vegas City Councilman's actions and ethics are being called into question after text messages between him and the shelter's CEO reveal what one expert calls a stunning disregard of responsibility as a public official.
If we question your judgment, it's not just this decision. We're going to question everything about you. So it leads to a loss of trust.
Dr. Abigail Aguilar has taught ethics and political theory at UNLV since 2002. We asked her to examine this text stream 13 Investigates obtained through a public records request between City Councilman Brian Knudsen and Animal Foundation CEO Hillary Gray during the October 19th City Council meeting.
In this sort of a case, it's not just that this particular public official can lose our trust. And again, not just this decision, but all decisions. It's that we might question everybody else up on the dais.
Although the city said no other council members were texting with Gray during the meeting, this text shows Gray and Councilwoman Olivia Diaz arranging a phone conversation the night before the contentious council meeting.
Who answers to who? Because it's starting to look like the council answers to the board of the Animal Foundation. I'd like to think that that's not true, but we have to look at what's happening. You are the leaders. They answer to you.
The October 19th meeting drew a packed house of animal welfare advocates, former shelter employees, and rescue groups who were there to implore elected officials to make meaningful change at the Animal Foundation.
I think that we are past the point of demanding for answers, and we are demanding truth at this point and change, because the answers tend to be excuses or we're just not hearing anything at all.
13 Investigates has reported for more than a year on poor working conditions and wages for shelter staff and failure to provide humane and appropriate care to the animals. The issue finally made it onto a city council agenda, giving the public a chance to be heard. But while the public was speaking, Councilman Brian Knudsen was texting with Animal Foundation CEO Hillary Gray, writing, "Stay strong. Sorry, this is happening."
If you're going to take a job in the public, whether it's him on a council or her running a foundation that gets taxpayer money, you have to be prepared for the scrutiny. And to apologize that there is this scrutiny, I can't even imagine why he would think that's appropriate.
Many former employees and others who showed up to speak gave their time during public comment to former Animal Foundation COO James Pumphrey, an outspoken critic of the shelter who was fired in July.
Anyone else willing to give up a minute to James? Okay, I think James, we have how many minutes now, please? 19, and his is 20.
As Pumphrey began to speak,
I come to speak to you today to advocate for mercy and for compassion.
His former boss began to lobby her contact on the council. Gray texted Knudsen he, meaning James, shouldn't be able to speak for 20 minutes, effectively giving a presentation.
I think that raises the question of why doesn't she want the accountability? What's going on there? Is it just the money is being spent poorly? Is the money being misappropriated? Are the complaints about the governance true? All of those sorts of games that she seems to be playing seem to confirm the worst, that there is a problem here.
She says Knudsen's response is even more problematic. He wrote, "It's all a PR thing. I'm so sorry. Nothing is real."
If that's true, why do we even have these meetings? Why invite the public to give statements if it doesn't mean anything? Is this just a game?
She says Knudsen's disregard and dismissal of the comments sends a clear message.
That the public doesn't matter. The public doesn't matter in terms clearly of the public statements they make or in terms of their taxpayer money.
Gray goes on to discredit Pumphrey, but she does it one way, speaking publicly, and another via text.
I can't really discuss in a public forum. It's not appropriate to talk about personnel matters, but I can assure you that the situation with Mr. Pumphrey is not as portrayed.
Via text, she told Knudsen this guy was fired for cause. He did terrible things.
That's a problem as well. in terms of a conflict of interest, because if you can't say anything, you can't say anything. There is a conflict of interest. There is this influence on the decision making that's inappropriate.
After public comment, the council heard the agenda item regarding oversight of the shelter.
We have a contract with them, so it's incumbent on us to make sure that these contracts are being followed and our tax dollars are being spent correctly.
Mayor Pro Tem Stavros Anthony made several recommendations, including government entities having representation on the Animal Foundation's board.
I sit on fiscal affairs for Metro because we have tax dollars. The mayor and I sit on regional transportation because there's city tax dollars. There's other ones. So I'm not sure why we don't have a City of Las Vegas council person to sit on that board, and maybe the county.
Gray pushes back in this text to Knudsen where she says, "Why are we different from any vendor? You wouldn't ask for a seat on Las Vegas Paving's board." Aguilar points out that this vendor, the shelter, deals with animals, not concrete.
You're dealing with living things, and yeah, that raises serious concerns about her qualifications.
Speaking publicly about the city's representation on the shelter board, Knudsen said,
To provide requirements on them is unreasonable, in my opinion.
Via text, he tells Gray, just say no unless you think it's helpful for fundraising.
Does it suggest some kind of a bias or lack of impartiality?
Certainly. If he's giving advice to her about how to get around accountability, because that's what this was all about. Should there be more accountability? Should there be somebody on the board who can watch how these things happen, how the governance is done? For him to give advice to her about how to get around that, why would he do that?
Exactly what we wanted to know, but Councilman Knudsen isn't talking. He's ignored multiple requests for comment via phone, email, and text.
By not disclosing whatever it was going on in that meeting, by not disclosing it now when asked, it really seems to confirm guilt for us. If he's not doing anything wrong, why not say that?
Professor Aguilar calls the councilman's actions an ethics violation and questions why he and Gray seem to be colluding against the oversight other council members are advocating.
She wants to make the case that we don't need the oversight, and yet her behavior and his behavior make a stronger case for the oversight they're fighting against. So in that sense, everything they're doing is backfiring. It confirms for us the worst.
The only action the city took at that October 19th meeting was to authorize an independent audit of the Animal Foundation's finances, saying it's not allowed under the contract to audit shelter operations. We should note that neither the mayor nor the mayor pro tem responded at all to our multiple requests for comment. As for Hillary Gray, she declined comment through a spokesperson. Darcy Spears, 13 Investigates.